Welcome to Perpetually Exasperated, the podcast where we've chosen to read new, best-selling books from both sides of the political spectrum, so you don't have to, and tell you how, at times, they've got the right idea, but mostly how they're missing the point of why everything kinda sucks. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Joseph's twitching eyebrow. In this first episode, we'll be talking about Tammy Bruce's Fear Itself, Exposing the Left's Mind-Killing Agenda, billed by HarperCollins as a book to help explain and defeat the use of fear, not just to control society, but to punish and destroy those who do not comply or threaten the status quo.
So, let's see how well this keeps us perpetually exasperated, and why you should be as well.
Okay, so I feel scared, I suppose? Or I imagine I would if all the information available to me was what I could find on cable news and social media, at least.
Well, I mean, we have plenty of reason to be scared, and we don't even need to rely on the media for this one. When's the last time you were scared about a health bill, for instance, or a food bill, or house stuff? Things are kind of expensive right now, and for some reason, our income is not really keeping up with that. So there's plenty of reason to be insecure about where we are, not just individually, but as a society. So plenty of reason to be scared, I would say.
Ah, so she's right? I mean, like the way she talks about it and the way she screams about it, really. She's obviously being intentionally abrasive, but is she making some valid points?
Every once in a while, when I'm reading through this, I notice that, yeah, sure, she's onto something. There was an introduction of sorts where she said, something's not right. And it's a plaintive remark made as we connect the dots between the abnormal cultural and political dumpster fires erupting all around us. All that sounds good so far. Then she says, it's also an acknowledgement that left-wing bullies who fancy themselves social and political masters of the universe have weaponized fear in a sinister effort to control us. And I lost me. Because, I kind of bill myself as a left-wing guy, and I'm like, I'm not trying to make people scared here. I'm just trying to help people make sense of what's going on here, But there are plenty of things here where in chapter 1, the terrible obscure bioweapon, she says at the very top, make no mistake, there are legitimate and frightening crises and events deserving of our attention, concern, and action. This book exposes how the powerful exploit our natural and beneficial emotional reactions for the political benefit of the ruling class. No mention of leftists here. You could easily talk about the billionaires. You could easily talk about any political party in power, and that resonates with people, because people are feeling that. It's when she decides to turn the entire focus of it upon the left, or the Marxists, or variants thereof.
She does hate Marxists.
Oh boy, she hates Marxists. And she hates cultural Marxists, which is not a thing, by the way. That's where she loses me, and that's where this becomes less a book about, oh, this is just for disaffected people, myself included. No, this is more for the Fox News crowd.
Okay, so she's right about that you should be scared, but maybe not so right about exactly what or why.
Yeah, because throughout the book, she's talking about cultural issues. She's talking about wokeism. She's talking about critical race theory. She's talking about diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. She's talking about the gays. She's talking about black people. She's talking about immigrants. She's talking about all of these things that are essentially billed as boogeymen by Fox News, and very rarely, if ever, talking about the economic issues that I brought up right at the beginning here, where we're talking about, how do I pay my bills? How do I save for retirement? How do I save for any sort of emergency? There's nothing about the economic fears that we're all dealing with. It's all about the cultural fears, and that is where she's losing me, and I imagine that's where she lost you and probably lost a lot of people who don't watch Fox News 24/7.
Yes, and she also essentially focuses every piece of her analysis exclusively on the left, despite many of the problems she cites being the fault of at least her party as well.
Yes, but this is also written at a time, I believe, in mid-2024, where her party's not the one in power at that time.
True.
This was the Biden administration. He was a very effective target for them and for a lot of people who were just not happy with the direction that the country was going. So she could afford to throw those Molotov cocktails of rage and unhappiness about life in general. Never mind the fact that the administration that came in, the present one, the Trump administration, is doing a lot of this stupid nonsense.
Pretty much verbatim.
By the way, there's a quote in here, and I'll just have it go. Quote, "Abolition of the family was a central tenet of communism, specifically called for by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels in the Communist Manifesto. The pair said that under communism, the state would be in charge of educating children rather than their parents, and the exploitation of children by their parents would end. Marx and Engels denounced the bourgeois claptrap about the family and education, about the hallowed correlation of parents and child as disgusting." All of this sounds horribly familiar, doesn't it? Parents have been pushing back on the disgusting frenzy by teachers' unions to cleave the relationship between parent and child, using reasoning that would make Marx and Engels proud. Unquote. Okay.
What you got to say about it?
I was going to be nice. I made it a point not to make this an episode of debunking, but the manifesto was quoted here, and now you've gone too far. Here's the full quote from the manifesto, just so that we're all clear here. Quote, "Abolition of the family, even the most radical flare-up at this infamous proposal of the communists. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital, on private gain. In its completely developed form, this family exists only among the bourgeoisie. But this state of things finds its complement in the practical absence of the family among the proletarians and in public prostitution. The bourgeois family will vanish as a matter of course when its complement vanishes, and both will vanish with the vanishing of capital. Do you charge us with wanting to stop the exploitation of children by their parents? To this crime we plead guilty. But, you will say, we destroy the most hallowed of relations when we replace home education by social. And your education. Is not that also social and determined by the social conditions under which you educate by the intervention, direct or indirect, of society, by means of schools, etc.? The communists have not invented the intervention of society in education. They do but seek to alter the character of that intervention and to rescue education from the influence of the ruling class. The bourgeois claptrap about the family and education, about the hallowed correlation of parent and child, becomes all the more disgusting, the more by the action of modern industry all family ties among the proletarians are torn asunder, and their children transformed into simple articles of commerce and instruments of labor. Unquote. Bitch! The context of the time was that the Industrial Revolution was already abolishing the ideal family through child fucking labor of the proletariat in the sending of fucking children into the factories so that the families wouldn't starve to death. Not to even get into the more historical traditions of kids in agricultural families being sent into the fields to work rather than having an idyllic childhood and getting an education, etc., and so on. And by the way, today, especially in places like Arkansas, they're trying to bring child labor back. Are you fucking with me right now? This bitch got me to fucking debunk her when I was, out of principle, avoiding it as much as possible. You do not ever misquote the manifesto. So, are you gonna actually sit here and tell me that the communists are the ones that are truly trying to disrupt the family? No. The ones in power are trying to exploit the family and exploit the children as much as possible to keep that wealth flowing in and to keep the line going hockey stick so that they can feel better about their lives. You are pointing the finger at the wrong person, ma'am. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program.
Give or take. So, do you think that, like, in 2 years we'll have exactly the same book on the left from, I don't know, Brian Taylor Cohen or something?
I will be very surprised if there isn't one. And this is going to be following this cycle of outrage. This is going to be a cycle where we're going to have a couple of years of the present administration fucking things up for us, and then the people who are out of power are going to be screaming to the high heavens, see, this was a bad idea, we should never have voted for them, vote for our guys will fix the problem. And then the midterms will happen, and let's say for the sake of argument that the cycle is correct, that we're going to get the Democrats back in power in the legislation and thus further restrict the Trump administration from doing anything else. Well, we're going to have more unhappiness follow from that because they're not going to be able to do much of anything legally, and we're going to have some more stagnation. And so then the outrage machine will continue. Hey, the Republicans aren't doing anything. They are completely ineffective. Vote the Democrats in. We'll fix it this time. We pinky promise. And let's assume that they do manage to win this time and get into power and maybe get a Congress as well. And they're probably not going to do anything, and the cycle will continue. This is going to be just perpetually happening, and thus keeping us perpetually exasperated. Title drop.
So, and almost more concerningly, it seems like all the things that she's afraid of are not human problems. COVID or the climate. They're things that come from outside and threaten us existentially, but she seems to be certain that every single problem is the fault of the left.
So there's a quote here from Chapter 9, A Climate of Crisis, where she says, "The Post reminds us this isn't all far-fetched, considering the overall agenda of climate extremists. For huge swaths of the green movement, remember, degrowth is a preferred solution to all climate issues. That means an effective reduction of global living standards via artificial scarcity, which would necessarily entail mass death. So the idea of Greens moving to suffocate humans to save the climate isn't that far-fetched." Tammy responds, "Great, we should start right away. Them first. Hollywood celebrities, Democratic politicians, and millionaire business executives who live in mansions and travel in private jets and yachts on luxurious vacations, and ironically travel the world attending climate change conferences, are among those telling the rest of us we must make painful sacrifices to avert a climate apocalypse. Never mind that they generate gigantic carbon footprints with their privileged lifestyle." Now, I have a lot of qualms with Tammy throughout this entire book. What she said right there was 100% correct.
Yep.
She has a point. This is some of the stuff that we, as the American people, are a little bit ticked off about. Why is it our fault that the climate is changing in a way that is causing much more powerful hurricanes, much more powerful firestorms, droughts, or other adverse weather conditions that make life just an itty bitty bit harder? And now you want us, the American people, to make our lives even harder in order to avert that, when it's the corporations, it's the billionaires, it's the politicians, it's the people who are in power, both Democrats and Republicans who are causing the majority of the damage to the environment. That kind of hypocrisy pisses me off a little bit, and it pisses off a bunch of people a bit, and I completely understand that. So this is one of those few times where I read Tammy's words and I went, yeah, fair point.
And interestingly, you'll notice that while you mentioned 3 very important groups of powerful people that are not listening to the advice that we're giving, she only mentioned 2. She excluded corporations.
That's true.
And that is a very notable exclusion because from an emissions standpoint, virtually all effectual emissions are from corporations. Most of them are the energy generating corporations for nations. I don't think you get to individuals until down the numbers of thousands. Mm-hmm. It's all businesses, and yet she seems to think that it's all wealthy leftists.
Yeah. The Hollywood celebrities, the Democratic politicians. And I'm assuming when she said millionaire business executives, she's talking solely about the donors to the Democratic Party. Never mind the donors to the Republican Party.
Yeah, not the Koch brothers.
No, they're fine. They didn't do anything wrong. It's the George Soros people.
Of course. Elon never did anything wrong.
Absolutely not.
So, moving away from her description of the problem for a bit, what about her actual advice, her solutions?
Don't be scared.
Okay. Is that it?
Kinda. It's mostly don't let the left bully you.
And buy a gun.
Also buy a gun. That helps. That this comes from this perception of the left being a domestic abuser, which is honestly, leave aside the actual substance of her arguments and whatnot, it's actually kind of a vivid and powerful argument because she's talking to people who probably have, at some point in their lives, dealt with abuse in some way, shape, or form, be it domestic, be it professional, be it just existing and dealing with this kind of almost existential abuse. And, you know, to some degree, she's not exactly wrong, in my personal opinion, that we as a society and we as individuals have dealt with some kind of abuse from powers that be. I would argue, however, that the abusers aren't necessarily the left, but they're more so the people who are truly behind those in power, the ones who control the amount of information we receive, the kind of information we receive. They control how much money we get every single day, what we're able to buy, and all kinds of stuff like that. This is something that can speak to us on an existential level and on a deep psychological level. But the target is wrong. The target is too shallow. The target is not for us. It's for the Fox News people. And that's what leaves me so frustrated about this book. Because there are times where it's like, you're so close. You're so close to figuring it out. But you don't. And it's so frustrating.
Yeah, in some ways, this approach reminds me of Steve Bannon's description of the Trump campaign's approach, which he described as muzzle velocity. And that's the approach of basically not giving your own audience enough time to think about what you're saying so that the overly emotional, fact neutral, or often fact negative statements that you're making can't be easily checked against the actual reality of the world. And so the fear just continues to mount and mount.
Yeah, there is certainly that strategy in play here, and it did kind of work on me where I was seeing all of these quote-unquote facts, these citations of how the left, DEI, critical race theory, so on and so forth, are destroying the very fabric of America, and I just didn't want to turn this into a debunking marathon. That's exhausting. That takes so much time. And we've already seen how, when we're in this kind of argument between the emotional accusations and the more, I hesitate to use the term intellectual, maybe more reason based. Well, actually, this is not right. This study says this study says that. People don't care. They don't care about the reasons this is wrong. They still feel that fear. They still feel that anger. There is, and this is for me the most brilliant and really darkly brilliant part about the Trump campaign. It's tapping into a very legitimate fear and a very legitimate frustration that a significant portion of the populace is feeling right now. They're taking that fear and they're turning it on fairly easy targets and discrediting any attempt to debunk that by saying that those who are debunking it are part of the problem. And let's be honest, those who are trying to debunk it do tend to be part of the problem, aren't they? They're the ones who are not doing enough to fix the problem, so they're part of the problem. And therefore, the solution is apparently Trump and anti-wokeism and all this anti-intellectual stuff that just makes the problem worse. But boy, it makes us feel better knowing that we are right to be fearful. We are right to be angry. And that frustrates me, not at the Trump campaign, because it's brilliant. It frustrates me that the Democrats aren't taking that righteous anger and that righteous frustration we have towards the state of things and using it for their own ends to get in power. They just keep saying, no, everything is fine. Look at the chart. The chart is saying things are fine. No, it's not. Things are not fine right now. The inflation is hurting us. The inequality of not just wealth, but just standard of living, that's real.
Eggs are $8.
Eggs are $8, for fuck's sake. That's real. You can't point at a chart and tell me that things are fine. Things are not fine. What are you going to do to fix it? And if your response is to press forward, it'll be fine soon, we promise.
To Biden it, basically.
To Biden it. To Kamala it. Why should we believe you anymore? You haven't done anything to prove to us that you're making things better for us right now. And if you're not making it better right now, but you're making it better for us later, you better have a really good explanation as to why we should trust you. And we didn't receive that in 2024. Look at the results. It clearly shows we didn't trust them. Now, is the person in power the one who's actually going to fix it? I'd say no. I'd personally say no.
Yeah, I think he's just going to steal from us.
Yeah, but he at least validated us. And you could argue that in this book, Tammy is trying to validate our fears, our deep fears about what's going on, our anxiety about things. I just wish that she could talk about stuff other than wokeism, for fuck's sake.
And Marxism, the thing she hates, absolutely the most. So she's not, as much as she claims this, she's not really trying to help anybody not be scared. She's just trying to get you to agree that she's scared of the same things that you are.
Yes, and part of that comes from her claiming, to varying degrees of accuracy, that she used to be a leftist too.
Oh, yeah, sure.
She used to be totally on the side that was against Trump, but then she woke up, essentially. And
but not that woke. Not too
that,
woke.
Not that kind of woke. The actual kind of woke. But nonetheless, she is not really giving us anything. She's not giving us anything to truly do except be like her. Wake up from being woke, which is quite the phrase, by the way.
Fall back asleep?
She didn't come up with that. I did. I would like to trademark that, by the way. Please give me money.
Wake up twice, bitch.
But it's more about join our side. Our side totally knows what's going on.
Do you think it worked? Like, do you think there's anybody that wasn't already, mainlining Fox News to the pineal gland that was convinced by this book?
I don't think this book was for them, but there is still a segment of the populace that this book didn't reach that nonetheless voted for the Democrats less during the 2024 election, and part of the reason why Kamala lost. These people don't trust the Democrats anymore. And why should they? Why should they trust these guys who had a chance to fix things, didn't, and didn't properly explain why it wasn't reaching them, and having very clear paths forward to fixing the problem? Why should we give them another chance? But it was less about voting more for Trump and more just staying home, because the alternative to Trump didn't seem like it was going to help. It was just going to be another instance of the lesser evil. Newsflash, lesser evil still has evil in the name. What if I don't want evil? What if I want good?
Move to Norway. I mean, not literally, but you're 100% right. Clearly, in many ways, the strategy of this book is not vote for me, but don't vote for the other guy because he's trying to kill your family.
Which is a wild thing to say.
But I mean, it's what fascists always do, right? I mean, look at the propaganda from the 1930s. They went in for, like, Jews will eat your kids and stuff. I mean, they were extra crazy about that.
Yeah, but this is echoing a lot of the same arguments,
Very
but
true.
just change Jews to the left. Change Jews to
Marxists.
Exactly. See, you're getting the idea.
I get it. Fuck Marxists. They
Yeah.
just called the book that and written the word Marx in caps 500,000 times.
Honestly, it might have sold a little bit more. Who knows? But it's so frustrating.
So then why did she write this? What was the point of writing 300 plus words of essentially nothing but screaming at the top of her lungs about Carl?
Well, then let me ask you a question. Where is she now?
Oh shit, where is she now?
She is, last I recall, a spokesperson for the State Department.
No!
Now, I don't have any proof of this whatsoever. There's nothing here that's proving she wrote this book explicitly to audition for the Trump administration. However, there was a Politico article on January 4th, 2025, talking about how she was chosen to be the spokesperson for that Department of State, and it was noted that, quote, the Los Angeles native has written a number of books, including the recent Fear Itself, Exposing the Left's Mind-Killing Agenda.
Bro.
It's possibly an audition tape. I don't know. And she's not the first. Remember, there are about 23 people from Fox News in the Trump administration right now.
So Rupert Murdoch did this.
Rupert Murdoch facilitated this through Fox News.
Okay, so I should be angry at Rupert Murdoch. Check.
Among other things. You should be angry not just at Rupert Murdoch. You should not just be angry at the Trump administration. You should have been angry at the Biden administration. You should be angry at the Democrats right now who are not doing a whole lot except obstructing, ? Depending on the time of day. You should be angry at the system that gives us a binary choice between the greater evil and the lesser evil. And it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. If you're a Republican, you see the Republican Party as the lesser evil and the Democratic Party as the greater evil, and vice versa. And what kind of a choice is that?
Not a choice at all.
No, it's not a choice worth making.
So, this is essentially a cover letter. I mean, not exclusively, but she's a communications professional. So this was just proof that she is competent at communicating the message of fear of cultural Marxism. And who cares what people think about it as long as the other communicators hiring her feel like what she's saying is within the party zeitgeist?
At least good enough to do so.
Of course.
Because, let's be real, you read this book along with me. Did you actually think she wrote every single word of this book?
Absolutely not. If this was even ghost written, I would be mind blown. This seems like something that was pulled out of ChatGPT by an intern. It's just a thesaurus that got lost in the halls of Fox News Studios.
Yeah, but it worked, did it not? She's in the administration. It's on the shelves right now. It's allegedly getting some revenue.
And you could read that piece of shit on Fox News verbatim, and it would blend right in with the rest of the coverage.
Exactly.
That's true.
So, who is the book for? It's for the Fox News people, and it's for the Trump administration.
It's for his transition team. That's who it was for. That actually makes a lot of sense.
And why was the book written? To get a job in the Trump administration and to keep the idea of cultural Marxists and the left being behind all the problems in America firmly in the cultural mindset of America. Is it accurate? Who cares?
So in some ways, Fear Itself was a good title because the book is nothing but that.
Yeah, it's all about fear. It's about validating fear. And it's about pointing the finger as they are the ones behind all the fear. But the people she's pointing to are not really the source of that fear. But they're a convenient boogeyman, aren't they?
Do you think that she ordered the extra large portion of irony, or it came free with the meal?
It came free.
Good Lord.
Because this is what it's about. It's not about actually figuring out who is to blame for everything, because they're the ones that are writing her check. So it's very rare that she talks about anything economic related, but there's one thing here, and it's talking about this idea that economic leftism and Marxism, I guess, is almost a sin, really. There's this quote: "Consider this. Envy is based on a belief that what we desire is unfairly difficult or even impossible to achieve. This is a conviction that no matter our talent, passion, or commitment, we will never enjoy full access to what we desire. The left relies on convincing their constituents that they have no agency, they're useless, and will never accomplish anything on their own accord. So, the left tells us that big government must become bigger and create suffocating new regulations with a massive redistribution of wealth through exorbitant taxation of the wealthy and middle class." This is a really weird take on Marxists claiming that the people have no agency. It's this very odd viewpoint that it's okay that some people can't make it despite the challenges put before them. And she expands on this further on this next quote here. "We all understand there are problems in every society, including our own, and there always will be. What's important is that America is a nation always working to become better. It's a constant effort, like practicing medicine. We're never finished. We must always refine and improve our nation while remaining true to the divine template of governance left to us by the founding fathers. That's why the world continues to try to reach our shores. Setting this nation on fire by embracing a dead and cancerous political theory of envy is not our best option. Most of us work to achieve our dreams, understanding that in a free society, not everything is fair, and we work to improve what's possible. Most of us strive to achieve our version of the American dream, which is unique for everyone, earning enough to have a middle-class lifestyle, raise a family, and have fulfilling and enjoyable times. The American middle class enjoys a quality of life better than anyone else in the history of humanity." End quote. So, sorry. Time out. Divine template? Excuse me? There's this weird ideology of, and I'm paraphrasing here, the lack of fairness is inherent and inevitable and a law of nature, and we should accept that. Essentially, there is a hierarchy that should not ever be messed with.
Yeah, that God ordained and that we must respect.
Yeah, and that it's okay, in fact, it's great for some people to be absurdly wealthy, and on the flip side, it's totally fine that there are people at the very, very bottom of society who are basically living in the depths of poverty, and that's okay.
And not only is that okay, it's okay for those two groups of people to exist simultaneously, sometimes within driving distance of each other, for some reason.
Little awkward. And that, as a leftist, kind of annoys me, because aren't we like the richest country in the world right now?
In the history of the world ever?
Yes. And so if we have this absurd amount of wealth, why can't we afford to have everyone have a decent share of that? And we can still, I don't agree with having hierarchy, but let's assume we still have a hierarchy. We can still have it, and everybody's quality of life is better. Why is that not okay?
And even in the case of, like, realistically speaking, maintaining a completely hierarchy-less society with a couple hundred million people is really tough, because you have to know exactly where everybody is and exactly what everybody needs at all times. But it seems like her argument is that there is no reasonable limitation to inequality. That whatever inequality exists without any regulation is God-given, and if you do anything to change or alleviate anything, then you're going against what God said. You're taking things from the best of us, and you're making the worst of us. You know, it just seems ridiculous and maybe a bit self-serving as a person who works for those people.
So there's also something that she says that this is more about the social stuff, but it's this weird comparison and contrast with equality versus equity. And she says, quote, "Equality is a goal we should all strive to achieve. It requires that each of us be treated fairly and justly, as an individual, regardless of the demographic categories into which we fall. The civil rights movement in the 1950s and 1960s fought for equality and won long overdue victories, outlawing segregation and other ugly vestiges of racism." Skipping a lot, equity, on the other hand, isn't a dream. It's a cancerous nightmare. It requires remedying past discrimination by discriminating against someone else now. Yet students are being indoctrinated in schools around the country at every age level to embrace equity, and even our federal government is pouring money into its promotion and use. End quote. So this is a good summary of how frustrating this mindset is of equality of opportunity. There is so much focus on individual failings and individual success, and a categorical refusal to accept that historical circumstances, both long-running and recent, prevent these marginalized groups that Tammy has listed here even having a shot at equal rights. And we're not even getting into the conservative mindset of rolling back these reforms that is happening right now. Equality of opportunity is also a very convenient excuse to maintain unequal outcomes and an unequal hierarchy of in-groups and out-groups, while claiming and screaming to the high heavens that it's okay. And who exactly does that benefit? Hint, it's not us. And it doesn't matter if you are a straight person. It doesn't matter if you're a white person. It doesn't even matter if you're a man versus a woman. If you are poor, according to this, you still had an equal shot at opportunity and you failed. It is your fault. It is not our fault, our being the ones in charge. And there is a later quote. "Most of us are average people and are more than happy with our lives and accomplishments." No, we're not.
This okay white lady who works for Fox News.
That is simply not true. And that can easily be proven by simply looking outside and seeing and listening to people struggle, requiring multiple jobs to not only attain a middle-class life, but in fact struggle to stay out of poverty. And again, there is a rampant unhappiness in the American populace. How else do you seriously explain the election and re-election of Donald Trump? Who is this for? Where is this coming from? This is so exasperating and so frustrating.
Almost perpetually.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Perpetually Exasperated. If today's conversation got you thinking a little bit deeper, we want to hear from you. Give us a like, leave a review, share the show. Please send your feedback, thoughts, or questions you'd like us to answer in your comments.
Next time, we'll be reading and talking about Abundance by the New York Times' Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson of The Atlantic, a Simon & Schuster production claiming to explain that our problems today are not the result of yesteryear's villains. Rather, one generation's solutions has become the next generation's problems.
Until then, be critical, be skeptical, and remember, it's okay to be exasperated and to think outside of the binary political spectrum presented to us. Stay safe, friends.